And so here's a great example. President Trump signed an executive order. Let's get it pulled up. Let me get executive orders pulled up here. All right. You ushering in the next frontier of quantum innovation. And it says June the 11th, but then it says June the 22nd. All right. President Trump says in here, in 2018, I laid the foundation for the United States leadership in QIST, quantum information, science and technology, research and development. Now, this is a new executive order. It don't even have a number yet. I haven't even looked at the Federal Register, but I don't think it has a number yet. Let's see if it does. I don't believe it does. Let's see here, 2026. No, it doesn't yet. So it's a brand new executive order. Well, let me show you how, if you're a patriot, which most of you watching are, so I go ahead and assume some are, but I also speak to the audience as if some aren't, because you have friends and family who are way heavy entrenched in the normie world. All right. So 45-47 is President Trump's image on his ball cap. He put that there April the 2nd, 2023, which was a year and 7 months before November 2024. Those of you patriots, you know what 17 represents. All right. And the number 17 is so incalculable at this point that it's be difficult to go back. AI would be the only thing that could probably pull how many times the number 17 has been used in mainstream articles, in President Trump, etc. So when you look at the big picture, that's what I do. I show you the 40,000 foot view. Then I can pull in the pieces because God gave me the ability to have a photographic memory, and I can pull in the pieces and we can talk about intricacies, but I show you the 40,000 foot view. That's what not one single podcaster does out there, because they don't have the capability. And that is why once you have a blueprint and once you have the plan or the whole plan, you don't need anything else. Now you can choose that, and a lot of you do. You go listen to everything and anything that has a set of lips on it. That's what gets you in trouble. That's what gets your emotions and your feelings in trouble. But once you have a guy like me who has the only books, the first and only books that outline the whole 45-47 by military and federal law, you don't need anything else. You don't need anything else if you really want to know what's going on lawfully. So 45-47, let's go back to the basics for a moment. What President Trump has done lawfully, it's a strategy and a tactic that we used in World War II with the Philippines. President Roosevelt in the Philippines, we used this tactic called a puppet government, continuity government, and then also a military government. Now this is going to be different because every scenario is different, but there's an application there. So a lot of you are wanting to see this as like, oh, you want to see President Trump come out and stop the whole world and do a podcast or an interview and pull out this thing that looks like the Dead Sea Scroll and read out word for word what he's done. That ain't going to happen. You already have that with me. That's what my podcast's for. That's what my platform's for. That's why my platform never was taken down the whole time. And I'm telling the whole intricate details of the laws that President Trump and the military and the government's using. The good side. So once you have that, you don't need anything else. And it's an application. Now, it's constitutional, but it's not a constitutional government. It's a military government supported by the Constitution. This is where people struggle because you have a terminology problem. Most people have a listening problem versus hearing. They have a responding versus reaction. You got to listen. Listen, Linda. Remember that little video that went globally viral? Listen, Linda. Well, you got to listen, people. You got to listen. You can't just hear. A lot of people hear what you want to hear and fits your comfort zone. That's not what this is. This is a military operation designed to get you out of your comfort zone and rewrite history, but to rewrite it based on we're taking the Declaration of Independence and we're resetting it. It's not a rewriting of history the wrong way. We're rewriting the future where the past will look like what it was supposed to look like. What President Trump's using is the President Eisenhower plan of the military government and the continuity government. And when you go read the laws and orders that only apply to the military in a federal situation that I've outlined to you, once you put those in a chronological order, it can't be unseen, it can't be unheard, it can't be unread, it can't be unknown. But until you do that and put away all this other bullcrap, you're going to stay with your feelings and your emotions all in a fluster and a cluster because you're listening to everything that has a set of lips and everything that the main audience thinks is real and it ain't. All you need is President Trump's plan. And then President Trump and the military special operations, we all use that as a guidance to know where you all are out there. So the more the normal audience keeps falling for all these bait and switches, it's gravy, baby. So we can reset everything we need to reset because that main audience is still drifting over here to all this bull crap. And most of these bullcrap, like Candace Owens and Sean Ryan and all these people, guess what they have? Publicists who are making $40 and $50 and $60 and $80,000 for 2 and 3 and 4 months. It's all publicity, money. If that's what you want to support, then you got it all day long. But history is going to account for this dash. That's what makes President Trump unique. That's what makes him different. That's what makes his whole imagery separate from any other president out there. That's why he wasn't an established member. That's why he wasn't a politician. That's why he wasn't a general. They wanted someone outside of that. And all that matters is who's in charge of the system. We're in charge of it. And you don't need big numbers. And I hate to use this as an example, but you have to use it as an example. Hitler didn't even represent, Hitler and his military didn't even represent 10% of that population back then. And Hitler, with his small numbers, controlled the masses. You don't need a mass number to control the masses. You need a bunch of asses. That's not a swear jar. That's a real word. You need a bunch of asses to follow the bullcrap. But see, people always ask, well, why are you fighting so hard? Why are you fighting so hard? Why are you on these podcasts? Why are you doing this? Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to be the good guy. And I tell you, since my dad's passing, I've been doing a lot of my ancestral tree. And I have uncovered, swamp foxes, which were old school special operations. I've uncovered the first governor of Maryland, right here, all right, and all kinds of other dignitaries in my family, known for disrupting, but they were all independents, and they were not royalists. So it runs in the family, all right? But what President Trump has done is way against the establishment. All these rhinos out there and all these other people out there talking about, oh, well, he's part of them. You people are so foolish. And it's because people don't read. People don't read, people don't study, people don't comprehend. They want it spoon-fed to them. Like the little birds in the nest, I always put a post up. That's what the average American is. Birds in a nest, wanting someone else to do it. Lazy, complacent. And that's why we look the way we look. The good part of this operation is this, is the swamp did that to you all these years. The swamp did bamboozle everybody. They controlled everybody. They had everybody hypnotized. But they were doing it for their own good. They were doing it for their establishment. They were doing it for who was born into their families. This time around, it's the very, very wealthy man who didn't have to be bought who's saying, you know what, I can go in there and wreck their party and do it for the people. And the only way the people are going to know that is when the people start reading and separating themselves from the mainstream. Because what President Trump's using is an application of military law. It's straight out of the Law War Manual. It's straight out of all of our publications and our manuals, etc., that dates long before the Constitution and long before the Declaration. So that one thing today being published, this ushering in the next frontier of quantum innovation, well, you got to go back to Executive Order 13885, like he said in 2018. Well, that would have been his first term to all the sheep out there, to the normal target audience. That would be his first term. But then they showed you that quote-unquote Joe terminated President Trump's executive order for quantum initiative. Wow, well, why is he stating right here in 2018? Why is he stating right here? When you do Control F and type in Biden, it don't say in this executive order that Biden revoked that executive order, but it showed the world that Biden did. So how can President Trump write another executive order establishing, which that's a reestablishing, his system, his quantum informations? Well, you got to go, when you go to Google and you type in quantum initiative, or type this in, go to Google and type in this, go say, President Trump revokes all executive orders by Joe Biden. It'll say that's false. I'm pretty sure that President Trump takes precedent over Google. When you go to November and December of just this past November and December 2025, President Trump's True Social that majority of you still have not joined, you didn't listen to your president, the man you claim to support, you didn't go join his application. I don't know how you're a supporter of his if you didn't join his actual app when he told you to. He posts things on there. He rarely posts on X anymore because X is a captured operation. X marks the spot, and that's why Elon purchased X, and that's why Palantir and the little blue check, all that ties in. It's all a good thing because they're capturing people who are just spewing off, saying a bunch of things they shouldn't be saying. All right? We can't have everybody and their mama thinking they can have an opinion on social media just because they have an opinion. That's where the Aliens Act comes in, the 1798 Aliens Act that the Supreme Court ruled that President Trump can uphold and enforce. Oh, you might want to know that. It's not just the Aliens Act, it's called the Aliens and Seditions Act. So when you're writing against the government and you're writing something against military, and the military and government's actually working in the good for you, then you're displaying and you're broadcasting false information to public. So look at all these people on X that have hundreds of thousands of followers who are posting all this bullcrap. You don't have to be CNN. You don't have to be NBC. You don't have to be anybody like that. If you're broadcasting anything fraudulent, you're going against us, the military, which is a disgrace. And then a majority of those people claim they support the military. How can you support the military and you don't even know military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, military traditions, executive orders, national emergencies, treaties, and proclamations, the 4 ways that military ties with executive branch? How can you claim that? They can't. They're enemies, or they're just stupid, dumb, or ignorant. You have to call a spade a spade. So when you look at what President Trump's done, and then you go to his app and you see in November and December, I hereby revoke all executive actions by Joe Biden. Well, that's President Trump. For the people who thought Joe was real, that's still for the normal audience out there. It's not for you, the patriot. That's still for the normal audience. A president overrides Google, federal law overrides Google, and military law overrides Google. Don't matter what Google says. So that's still where they get the normal crowd, because we're still in the 45-47. So no one should be fatigued right now. Is number 47 over? No, and President Trump just said this in his Axios interview. He just said this. He said, we're still early on. We're still early in 47. Chill out. And then when you chill out, when you're chilling, you should be reading and studying what you should know. Because this one executive order right here proves to you. Quote-unquote Joe didn't do a thing because quote-unquote Joe was not real. He's an actor. And for the people out there who still think that's just far-fetched, it's because you don't read and study a single thing of what you're supposed to know. And you're crapping on, you're pooping on military operations, military strategies, military tactics, military everything when you say that, because it is a straight-up playbook and an application of law that we have to give President Trump 4 years in, 4 years back, 4 years in. You get 12 to do what would have taken 8, and then you explain later. But you can't stop and explain to people that, oh, by the way, in 1951, Congress violated the Constitution by putting term limits on the president because Article 2, Clause 1, Section 1 of the United States Constitution don't say anything about term limits. It says 4 years in a term. So you might want to know the Constitution. That is why when you use the Constitution as your crutch, you probably want to know the Constitution. Because nowhere in there does it say anywhere for Congress to put term limits on the president. And matter of fact, if you go read the Federalist Papers, and if you go read the Federalist Papers are what gets people. When our founders, but specifically James Madison, the sole author and writer of the Constitution, when he wrote the Constitution, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison wrote these things called Federalist Papers, 85 of them. All right? Between Alexander Hamilton and Madison, they wrote 80 of the 85. God loved John Jay, but he got 5. Those were promotion papers to the people back then in lifetime who didn't know anything about what a constitution was and what it was going to do and what it would look like in the future and how a bunch of idiot libtards and rhinos would be spewing off 250 years later, chopping their wieners off and all these other things like that. They never dreamt that our nation would look like that. These were promotion papers to go around to the people, word of mouth and door to door, say, hey, read these. This is what this is. This is what this is going to do. And then they adopted it. The people adopted it. But it's a lively thing. It's like the Bible. It's not dated. It's always living. The Constitution's always living, and it works for every generation. But it's all about ideology. It's all about what we want as people, ideology. But see, what the libtards do is they say they want the same thing, but yet they want us to pay for it. They don't want to participate in it. They want to chop their wieners off, but they want you to chop it off with your money. They're going to go do the actual procedure, but you're going to pay for it. No, that's not how it works. Sorry. If you want to chop your yin-yang off, then go ahead. Go chop your yin-yang off. But you pay for it. I want a Corvette. I want a 1970 models Corvette, but I don't want to pay for the insurance. So, are you going to buy me a Corvette? Or, if I go buy a Corvette, are you going to pay the insurance for me? It's something I want. But are you going to pay for it? Okay, if you're not, then see the same principle. People don't live by principles. Everybody wants to chop their, you-know-what off. Or all the women out there, these females out there want to look like a boy. They go cut their hair to look like a boy, and they go press down their boobies, and they try to act all manly. Well, they're in a better position. At least they ain't got to chop nothing off. I guess they could have those removed, but they all want us to pay for it. You cannot distribute what isn't taken from someone else. It is simple logic. It's not difficult. And people make this so difficult. You can't give something to someone that wasn't taken from somewhere else. Real simple. Those are the people who try to use the Constitution. They try to use their voice the wrong way, but they're the ones who will stand in a picket line. They're the ones who will stand out there over Republicans and conservatives. While Republicans and conservatives are all just, Candace Owens, oh, whatever you say. Oh, Charlie Kirk. Oh. That is what's wrong with America. None of these people empower people. None of these people showed and taught you the Constitution. None of these people teach you the foundation. None of these people tie in the laws, the orders of military and federal. None of these people. None of them. General Flynn. Oh, General Flynn's out there. Oh, local action, national impact. You can't persuade and coerce people. You can't persuade and coerce people to do. You've got to teach people the laws, the orders of the land that supports the Constitution, that supports our foundation. And people get all butthurt out there. Oh, he said so-and-so, and he's calling. I'm not calling them out. I'm just telling you straight up. You can't be preaching something that you don't practice. And you shouldn't expect people to go out there and just go. I don't want people to just follow President Trump and love President Trump because I love him. I want you to read the laws and the orders of the military, and you'll have greater respect for the military and President Trump when you read what's in place. But when you don't read what's in place, and you don't study what's in place, and you don't comprehend what's in place, and you don't apply what's in place, then guess what you become? A sheep in the other form. And you're controllable in the other form. And then guess what happens in the other form? A swamp grows in the other form, and then you have another swamp again. And they make you inferior to them. Because you don't know what to ask them, you don't know how to hold them accountable, you don't know what their responsibilities are, because you don't know what you're supposed to know. And that's the polar opposite of what President Trump and them are doing. It's brilliant. Because it's all military based. It's all strategies and tactics. So when you follow the mainstream, the masses, remember, it's full of asses. The M is sometimes silent. So like, this is so genius in another way, because there's all kind of validations happening right now. Every time I turn the corner, there's a validation, a validation, a validation, a validation, validate. But it's because there's a blueprint there. Now, you wouldn't have known the blueprint without me. That's true. That's my intellectual property. I put it all together and the capability to do so, but it's still the laws of the land that support our foundation. And with a lineage like mine, it's so full of Civil War, 1812, War of 1812, the Revolutionary War, and everything else that in my family. Found out this week that one of my relatives, the signer of the Declaration of Independence, baby, Abraham Clark. So, you know, it just shows that we have to keep this going. And people like me and you out there who are patriots, you don't worry about what other people think. They're where they are, and you're where you are. You got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything, which means you got to fight for the right things, though. But when you're fighting for it, you got to know what you're fighting for. And so many Republicans and conservatives right now are lost. Or they're like a penguin in Jamaica right now. They have no idea what's going on. Will they go vote for President Trump? Yes. Will they go vote for his candidates? Most of them. But President Trump, everyone he's endorsing is straight out of the President Dwight D. Eisenhower playbook of his military government. It's businessmen. Well, at that time it was only businessmen. Sorry, ladies. But now it's businessmen and women. All businessmen and women. And or, very key, there's that grammar. There you go. And or special operations or Navy SEAL veterans. And some regular veterans. But a lot of colonels, a lot of lieutenant colonels, but mainly of special operations and also Navy SEALs. That's straight out of the President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was also a 5-star general. We've only had 8 5-stars post the Civil War. And President Eisenhower is one of those. It's straight out of his military government playbook, where you take businessmen and women and military in a military government. And you can look that up on Google and go read all about it on the Rutgers University website. It'll be an EDU safe website and credible website. But you can look up the Atomic Midwife. Read all about it. That's exactly what President Trump's doing. And it's a fundamental reset of the Declaration of Independence. If you go read from 2017 to 2021, every action that President Trump took during 2017 to 21 was a resetting of the legislative branch. All these unique executive orders with national emergencies were declared, and President Trump's enforcing those. 2021 to 2025 was the resetting of the executive branch. That's why January the 1st, 2021, FEMA and Department of Homeland Security put out a publication called Reconstitution of the Executive Branch, which means to take something from its state and put it back into its original state. If you're taking something from here and putting it into its original, that means it's not in its original. That should tell you right there, hijacking. Something changed, something's different, something's not correct. That's why they showed, quote-unquote, Joe, nothing was correct that day. He swore in at the wrong time. all that matters. And then, naturally, I'm not going to break down that whole day, but the 3 cannons at Arlington is not a 21-gun salute. It's a funeral. Real simple. The 4 cannons were at Joint Base Andrews with President Trump. The Presidential Salute Battery, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, known as Old Guard, was with President Trump that day. They showed you this right in front of everything. That was a resetting of the executive branch. And then, right now, 2025 to 2029 is a resetting of the judicial branch. That's why it's judge, 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 court, 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 Supreme Court this, District Court that, Supreme Court this. That's why they showed you. In June last year, June 2025, the Supreme Court ruled that a district judge cannot block a president on anything to do with the nation. And what have they been showing you all over the news? District judge blocked this. A district judge blocks Trump here. A district judge, they're violating the very highest law of the land. And Republicans and conservatives out there, oh, what's Candace Owens saying today? And President Trump sitting there hammering all of them. He's hammered her. He's hammered Tucker. He's hammered all of them. How can you be a President Trump supporter and not listen to the man? I don't get it. I personally, I don't get it. A lot of you out there are husbands. You got to listen to your wife all the time. If your wife told you to do something, you didn't do it, she'd accuse you of what? You don't listen. And you know what happens after you don't listen a few times? Well, I've been in the doghouse a doggone long. When I get a kiss, I think something's wrong. Hank Williams. Hank Williams made a career out of what happens when you don't listen to your wife and your girlfriend. You get in the doghouse. You have to tell them to move it on over. Scratch it on over. Shake it on over. I mean, this ain't rocket science, but people love drama. People love drama, and the ones who say they don't love it more than anybody. People love drama. People who really want to know what's going on, you got all you need is President Trump's laws and orders. And you got to know how to put them into order. And that's what I do. I have no idea what's going on. Sounds like a cat's getting ate by a bear. But if you heard that, maybe a libtard over there trying to be like, hey, that's that Derek Jonhson. He's over there live right now. Let's mess him up. So it probably was a libtard actually shaving their legs for the first time this summer, to be honest. It's probably hurting. They got to trim off all that Sasquatch hair they got on their legs. But anyways, you got to know what's going on. It's real simple. Real simple. So this is kind of cool. I was just going to go live really quick because, you know, that's something that's happening right now that you can sink your teeth into. And then, you know, not a lot's going on right now as far as like rapid fire because Iran's already been planned. All of Iran's been planned the whole time. Anyone who thinks that President Trump solely and independently, just because he's president, could do all the things he's done with Iran like that shows that people are so vulnerable and controllable. Now, is it really happening? Did it really take place? Yes. We have really done this to Iran. Yes. We have really taken out their nuclear facilities. Yes. We have really signed a deal with Iran. Yes. We have the Abraham Accords. Yes. But all this that they're showing on the quote-unquote mainstream media, that's how vulnerable and controllable Republicans and conservatives are. To think that he can just do it that quick. It didn't happen like that. It's the 45-47. When President Trump rolled down that escalator, he already knew the beginning, the middle, and the end before he ever put his name, brand, image, lifestyle, and his children on this. That's what makes this so unique and so brilliant, but also biblical, historical, and monumental. So all you got to know is the blueprint. So The Midnight Rider Rides Again, my books, part 1 and part 2, they're number 1 bestsellers for a reason. They're the first and the only. They've been in publication since 2023, but they derive and stem from the documents that I've written that are still on the documents.info. It's still up. You can access those for for free, but they're dated up to 2022. They were published January 2021 for the whole world that knew me at that time, which weren't that many people. But there's no excuses at this point. It's the same thing. I have a #1 best-selling book, The Royal Flush of Country Music. I'm the first artist and songwriter in country music history to unveil how it works. I have Billboard hits. I have Texas country hits. On the 2 biggest charts in Texas and the world, I have hits from those. But people just don't want to know. People choose to remain in the dark. People choose to remain controlled and captured. And until people don't want that anymore, they're going to remain that way. And it's up to you, the people. You got to share. You got to word of mouth. You got to go to battle too. Now, some people aren't worth it. If it's someone that's just like it's going to create a divorce or something like that, or unhealthy situation for you, some people aren't worth it from that manner. You have to choose your battles, but you still have to fight your battles and pick them accordingly, and you still have to go to bat for certain people and certain things. Your communities, your schoolhouses, mama bears out there, especially you mama bears dealing with what you have to deal with and whatnot. You still deal with the private sector. You know, there's a big private sector out there. Matter of fact, I saw where one of the news outlets put out that 3,000 nurses were given diplomas or degrees fraudulently. So see, there's a lot of these things that's going to come out. So think about this. Think about those 3,000 nurses wherever they are. Just think if that was one of those nurses who made you feel stupid during 2020. See, but if you'd have known what you're supposed to know back in 2020, you might not have been a recipient of one of those idiots back then who made you feel inferior to them because you didn't have a nursing degree. How can you know what's going on? Because you have a brain and you apply it. How in the world do we pass curriculums outside of people like them getting spoon-fed and also given something, but other people who've had to pass a curriculum, we had to pass it how? So see, when you think of it, you have all the power in the world because you have a brain. Utilize it. It ain't no good, though, if you don't utilize it. So people like me are here to show you, hey, all these voices, all these people out there, they're still all about themselves. They never, ever mention President Trump first. They never highlight President Trump. They never talk good about President Trump. They never are his biggest follower, fan, promoter, etc. All these people that I named today, and I didn't name them all, they never talk anything good about President Trump. The only time they use him is when they need him to make them look good. Every single thing that I talk about always reverts right back to President Trump, the military, Dan Scavino, Devin Nunes, and all the people that work for President Trump. And the ones you won't never know. Every bit of my work reflects back on God, President Trump,